Good afternoon. Welcome to the Board of Health meeting of April 7th, 2025. Please note this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording this meeting, please notify the chairman. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29th, 2023 signing of the Acts of 2023, extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state emergency, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law until June 30th, 2027. This meeting of the Chatham Board of Health is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that people who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling 508-945-4410, and the ID is 655-404-419#, or they may join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast, simulcast on Chatham TV, Channel 8 and 1072, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. I turn the meeting over to our chairman, Dr. Noble Hanson.
Thank you. It shall be the policy of this board to conduct its meetings under the open meetings law so as to encourage public participation whenever time permits and as part of agenda item discussions. So we have two things on the agenda tonight, but first let's establish a quorum, and when I call your name, please say present. Carol Boyce.
Present.
John Beckley.
Present.
Ron Broman.
Yeah.
Ron Weiser.
Present.
Noble Hanson, I'm present. And then our alternate today is Joanna Kale.
Present.
Okay, good. So first we have on the item is the transfer station information. Carrie Purcell, who's present today, is the Municipal Assistance Coordinator, Mass DEP, and CC Cooperative Extension, Commercial Refuse Hauler Registration. She basically is the County Solid Waste Municipal Assistant Coordinator. So she's going to give us some information, and then we'll have a chance to ask questions.
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay? Is that
Yes.
better? Okay,
Yep.
Perfect. So yeah, I'm with Mass DEP, Barnstable County's Cape Cod Cooperative Extension. I've been in my position for over 8 years now. And I work with the Cape and Islands, Dukes, Nantucket, and Barnstable County, 23 municipalities on solid waste and recycling diversion. I am basically everything that is not too toxic to trash. We had just hired somebody to take over Calliope's position, who is the Household Hazardous Waste Environmental Specialist. His name is Anthony, and I've been working very closely with him since he was hired on March 19th. So we had our first hazardous waste event in Barnstable this Saturday, and we have another one coming up on April 19th in Sandwich.
How'd he do?
He did great. Very proud of him. He's in Oregon right now at a hazardous waste conference. So
Wow.
we pulled him in and then we shipped him out for a week.
Nice.
So it's giving me a chance to catch up on my work. So talking trash, so I'm pretty familiar with all of the transfer stations, what the towns are doing, the town resources, how they establish grant funds, and how well we provide reciprocity between my role and the role of the municipal transfer stations and trash programs. Chatham participates in the household boat shrink wrap recycling as a depot. They also do the holiday shrink wrap or the holiday strand light program. So Chatham does a lot for the community and is willing to open up their transfer station during seasonal periods to allow non-stickered residents to participate in specific programs, which is really, really special because not all transfer stations have the space or the capacity to do that. And so that's one of the things that I'm pretty proud of as far as the town of Chatham. And I'm also a resident here. I live right down the road.
Okay.
So I have specific vested interest in the things that are happening here. So that's really neat and fun. So we have a current solid waste crisis happening here in the Commonwealth. I don't know if many of you have heard of the solid waste and recycling master plans. That comes from the DEP. We started in 2010 to 2020, and now we have the 2020 to 2030. They have very strong goals to get to 2030 and 2050. So we want to reduce our trash. And one of the reasons are because we don't have a lot of capacity here in the Commonwealth for all of the things that we throw away. We have a limited amount of landfills, and we also have a limited amount of waste-to-energy facilities where we incinerate the trash and we create energy from that incineration. We used to have 9 waste-to-energy facilities, but now we only have 5. And there's a moratorium on expanding that capacity or building new capacity. So we're limited there. The only landfill that's being permitted for expansion is the town of Bourne. It's not to say that landfills couldn't be permitted or expanded for the existing ones here, but they are closing at a rapid rate, which means we have to haul via train or trucking our waste out of state. In some instances, the Cape's trash could end up in Alabama, in Birmingham, because they are expanding their transfer station by, thousands of tons per day. But when you look at the economics of the folks that live around that landfill, they're making on average about $17,000 a year in an annual salary. Wow. So if we think about our trash winding up there, it's kind of discouraging. We looked at cost benefits back in 2020, 2021. The commissioners and the county paid for a feasibility study to look at what that cost benefit analysis is, where can our trash potentially go, as well as our recyclables, and what local resources can we utilize. We also have volatile recycling markets, and that is the same way. You look at a stock market, and there's sort of these things that are out of our reach, out of our ability to control, and it kind of ebb and flows. So we can think of recycling as a commodities market. One day they might have a value, the next day we might be paying for the disposal or the recycling of some of those items. Food waste and collection, composting here in Barnstable County, it's a desert. Currently, I've been working on a Cape Cod Coastal Community Composting Program, proof of concept, with Joint Base Cape Cod and the Upper Cape towns. And that'll provide some means for composting to happen here on Cape Cod so that haulers are not coming over our bridges, picking up this valuable resource, and then shipping it out of here at a cost. We want to try to keep these things localized. At this particular moment, if we were able to get, shovel in the dirt and build the facility, Chatham would not necessarily benefit from that at this time because we're focused on the 4 Upper Cape towns under a general permit with Mass DEP. There's specific permits that you have to go through when you increase the amount of residue that comes through.
What do you mean by composting desert?
Meaning we don't have infrastructure here to compost on the Cape. So really residents and businesses, and it's mostly residents, can go to the transfer station if they have a sticker and bring their waste in small quantities. But if a commercial entity like a restaurant, a hospital, a business has more waste than the waste ban threshold of 1,000 pounds or more per week, they actually would have to call a hauler to haul it off Cape because we don't have the infrastructure built here in Barnstable County at this time.
Well, is our transfer station composting? There's all that piles of leaves. Is that compost?
Yep, so that's organic compost. I'm mostly referring to the food scraps.
We have bins, we have plastic bins.
Yes.
With flip lids that people can bring in their kitchen waste and they can dispose of it.
Yeah, so we lack infrastructure for large-scale composting. Yeah, but almost every single town has a program like the town of Chatham does, as far as residents being able to come into a transfer station and individually drop off their kitchen waste. So again, I mentioned the solid waste master plan. It does not address financial implications, but it does have very stringent and strong waste reduction goals that we're looking to follow. So, we kind of started to look at what's happening on Cape Cod. Are we doing better as a district, as a region? And when I say Cape Cod, I really do include the islands in a lot of my data, even though sometimes I neglect to mention them, those poor guys out there. So I mentioned the waste energy facilities. So they're managing about 3 million tons of solid waste. Active landfills, 1.5 million tons of waste. That includes ash and sludge, so they are at capacity. And the 2019 Solid Waste Master Plan, when they went through the waste audit, we realized that about 5.7 million tons of solid waste were disposed in the Commonwealth annually. In addition, we have 1.2 tons of C&D, which is construction, demolition. You also hear ABC, which is asphalt, brick, and concrete. And then contaminated soils. So when they're excavating for land, there are, Superfund sites, contaminated soils. And in some cases, those do reach the Bourne landfill. And right now, there's no new proposals for expanding. And we can't expand with a moratorium for waste to energy facilities. So right now, again, it's the Bourne landfill that's looking to expand capacity for the next 20 years. I do believe that Nantucket's landfill will continue to exist, but they will probably be only servicing Nantucket. I don't think they're gonna be importing or exporting much, as far as the island goes. So we're just, we're limited in decreasing solid waste management. Waste combustion is at full capacity. Landfills are closing. There's a decline in the capacity with the landfills here in the Commonwealth. We have extensive transfer capacity, although the issue is with our rail lines, there is some questions about who owns them and maintenances them, who keeps track of them. So, we say that if any one strong weather event, and it doesn't have to be localized to us, but it could be anywhere on the rail line from here to Alabama, Ohio, New York, Pennsylvania, et cetera, where our trash could wind up. A strong weather event could really put us in a crisis where it would bottleneck and we wouldn't really have anywhere to take our waste. And that could be, a really, really staggering issue, and it would bring up the cost because you have to have supply and demand in order for things to move. Neighboring states have limited capacity, so in some cases, they're closing down their landfills to out of state trash as well. So we have to go further and further every time we try to look for places to take things. And then again, like I said, the rail haul is age, resiliency, any type of closures that could happen, peak volume, poor weather. So we're really struggling to find those disposal outlets.
I remember a story years ago about a garbage barge that was wandering around the East Coast trying to offload tons of,
Yep.
and it kept getting rejected, and I'm not sure. Do you remember that story?
I do remember that story. I believe it was out of New York State. I don't know exactly why they couldn't find an outlet for the waste. And I honestly don't know what actually happened with the waste. Because when you think of international waters, I believe a lot of the time it's 3 miles out or further once you get into international waters. And if there are different waste laws, potentially you can just dump in the center of an ocean.
Okay.
Carrie, so you're mentioning landfill capacity, but ours goes to the CMAS, or is it CMAS now?
Yep, so
Which
it's
is a waste
branded
to
as
energy.
Reworld. Yep.
Yeah. Is there concern that we wouldn't be able to re-up our contract with them, or that they're gonna go away, or,
Not at this time. I haven't heard anything. Sometimes you hear rumors of that stuff. And currently, the Rochester facility seems to be continuing to be active.
Okay.
And so right now, there's no concern over contract negotiations or where, current capacity for those contracts to continue to expand those contracts and to continue it that way.
Okay, thank you.
Where is that trash going now, did you say?
It's a waste-to-energy plant in Rochester, Mass., which is just over by Wareham.
Yeah, it's just across the line from Wareham.
So the big trucks from Chatham go to Wareham,
Yes.
And
Okay.
it gets-
landfill,
No, a waste-to-energy facility.
waste
So,
energy, and it gets burned?
yep, it gets burned and then turned into energy, and that energy supplies energy to about 75,000 households.
And then does the town pay to dump that stuff at that facility? Sure.
Yep, there is a tipping fee for the usage. So there's a transportation cost and a tipping fee for the town.
Right.
Yep.
So this is a privately owned facility.
It
that
is.
enters into contracts with communities who want to outlet their waste.
Yep.
Okay.
And it would be the same for a landfill. So if you were trucking your trash to a landfill, there would still be a tipping fee for that as well. So it doesn't matter where it goes necessarily. There's no free outlet for where is away for our garbage.
Okay.
Are there landfills on the Cape where commercial trash haulers can bring their trash directly?
The only one is the town of Bourne. And other than Bourne and Falmouth, municipalities do not use their landfill, but some commercial entities work with the town of Bourne for tipping.
Say that again?
So other than Falmouth or Bourne, no other municipalities are using their transfer station, but private commercial entities do have contracts with them. And Bourne also takes the fly ash from Seamass Covanta, which is again now rebranded as ReWorld.
Right. So can a commercial trash hauler, somebody that goes around and picks up, can they bring the trash directly to one of those facilities and not to a town transfer station?
They could, yes.
And they pay a fee?
They would pay a fee,
And
yes.
we can get into the fees later, but.
Yeah, nope. So I know there's a couple of local haulers here that use the Chatham transfer station to tip their stuff, and then Chatham charges them and then takes that waste to the waste-to-energy facility, and the recyclables go to specific outlets as well that come in from commercial haulers that service the town. So this is 2022. I probably should update the map to 2024 because we're in 2025. But Chatham is actually pretty red here, and that's not a good thing. However, the reason why Chatham is red is because we only want the data for residential waste, and they were attaching commercial waste to that number, meaning the haulers that you were just asking about. We don't want to know what businesses are doing necessarily. It's a separate department than what I'm tracking. And, even though the haulers are picking up residentially, when somebody calls, one of the haulers and says, hey, I want curbside service, we only want to know what the trash numbers are for the first sticker holders that purchase an annual sticker that goes into the transfer station. Now you are green. I've been working with the town and the transfer station. So you're actually more in that light green color of the 750 or less pounds per household for trash, which is a good thing. And we tend to call this a map of pride. So the lighter you are, the more happy you can be. The darker you are, we call it the map of shame. We shame people. But this is just a demonstration of where folks are. And again, that's based on the municipal program. So anything that's white, it just means the town does not offer any paid services and people are on their own to hire a hauler to come through their home.
Really?
Yeah, so we call them washed hands communities. And it's just, again, it's because there's no municipal trash service within that town.
Now, there's a white spot there in the Cape. Is that, what's it look like, Orleans or something?
There shouldn't be a white spot on the Cape.
Okay.
I think it's yellow.
Yellow.
It just looks white. Down around Eastham.
Yeah, so we're completely covered. All 15 towns have a municipal trash program here on the Cape.
What do you mean by municipal trash program?
So it means that it's an offering of the Department of Public Works. It's a public works service that's either based on a sticker price. So when you go and purchase your annual sticker, it pays for the service, or it could be part of a property tax base.
So for residents to bring trash?
Exactly.
And then, but that doesn't, commercial haulers picking up stuff, that's a different, that's a
That's,
different
yep,
entity.
that's a private entity that does that.
So which-
Unless the
But-
town pays for it.
But one of the things that stimulated our interest is Mr. Rob Faley,
Yes.
told us that the town of Brewster does not allow the commercial haulers to dump in their transfer station. So, like a Nickerson or a
Yep.
Nauset can't use the Brewster transfer station,
Correct.
which we raised the question, okay, well, where is that trash going?
They're hauling it off Cape.
You mean, so Nickerson or Nauset will drive their truck off Cape and? bring it
They
somewhere?
will, or they'll choose a different transfer station that accepts it, like Harwich, for example. They actually make revenue by letting commercial haulers tip at their transfer station.
So Harwich is running like a regional transfer station,
Yep, in a way.
and trying to make money on
For
it.
commercial.
Yeah, for commercial. Eastham does the same thing. They allow commercial haulers through their transfer station as well. So where you see a gatehouse, there's usually a scale right next to it. So the trash trucks come over, and then there's a record of weight. And then when they come in, the trash is weighed, and then that tonnage is charged through a tipping fee. And the town charges that to those commercial entities, very much the same way that Chatham does it for your local haulers.
So each town makes their own decision on what's best for them in terms of whether they accept out-of-town generated waste or not.
Yep, exactly.
Okay?
Now, is there a way for the local town to actually know where the waste is coming from, say, or?
So boards of health are typically who permits the haulers to come through here. So you can provide regulations and verbiage that articulates where you want the waste to come from. So you might be able to say, to your haulers, town of Chatham trash and waste only. You can also do waste audits when they come in and they tip. I mean, the best way to know this is whether or not somebody's bringing in mail with addresses from Churro. So you can kind of actually do waste audits at the tipping floor, when they, in the blue building, they call it here. So you can look and see where the trash is being generated from.
We do have regulations that limit, it can only be from Chatham, and we're going to be discussing a way to have them have like an attestation that they're not bringing in anything from other towns, so.
Yep.
But do the local transfer stations actually have the ability to go in and rummage through the trash? And look at envelopes and see where it's coming from? Do they actually do that?
Your floor.
Yeah, we call them waste audits or waste
Do we
characterization
do it in
audits.
Chatham?
I'm not sure. You would have to check with the transfer station, probably Rob over at the DPW, to see how often they
I think
kind of.
he told us he didn't have the manpower to do that.
Yeah,
It's probably true. I'm like, a lot of municipal programs have a big gap in their staffing.
Right.
So everybody's sort of cross-trained and doing much more, because it's hard to hire, especially in an area like ours, because it's so seasonal. So, maybe in the winter, a few staff is sufficient, but then once the seasonality happens and you have a lot more people visiting our public services, like the transfer station, then you need more staff to be able to keep up. And so to pull somebody aside to do that is definitely, it's time consuming and for the staff and the town. Yeah, but you certainly could say, okay, hold on, Nickerson, we're gonna hang out for a minute and see where this came from. You certainly could.
In your opinion, do you think any commercial haulers from other towns are illegally dumping trash in towns that they shouldn't be?
I think there are enough resources here for them to go where they're supposed to go. And, hauling takes staff, it takes, wear and tear on the vehicles as well as gas. And it is an expense, so I think haulers are gonna do the best they can to stay in the areas that they're supposed to stay in and not travel too far. So I know with the local haulers here, they're not necessarily going too far, so the likelihood of the materials that are supposed to be coming here are originating from here. I would guess.
But you can do a spot check fairly easily to affirm that if you wanted to.
You could, yes.
And simply the word getting out that there is an occasional spot check inspection, I think, would go a long way towards keeping people honest,
Right.
as well as having a form that they declare very clearly when they come in. They assert and sign off affirming that this product they have came from Chatham.
Yeah, was generated in the town.
And then the generator, the routes have got to they've got to avoid mixed truckloads too.
Good question.
Yeah.
Would they go to several towns? Does Brewster then have commercial haulers that sort of focus on just Brewster, because they can't use the transfer station, they have to bring it somewhere else? Sounds like that might be bringing it all to Harwich, depending on the rates, but.
They could, and it definitely depends on the rates. So if I'm a
You don't
hauler,
really know
like,
for sure exactly what's happening there.
yeah, I mean, the commercial side of it is more of the wheelhouse of a different department within DEP. I mean, locally, I kind of have a pretty decent grasp on what's going on. If you think of, say, a Nauset, right? They're based in Orleans, but they service the entire Cape. So if they're servicing a Brewster resident that calls and said, hey, I would like trash service, or a business in Brewster, they're not taking the waste to Brewster, but they could be taking it to Eastham or Harwich, depending on the fee. And if they don't like the cost to tip there, if they want to, they can drive it off Cape and go to a CMAS Covanta.
Do you think, for example, a Nauset truck would be assigned to just one town? Or would they maybe bounce from town to town on a route?
I would say a typical route they would probably stay again localized because they don't want to operate somewhere where it's too thinly populated. They want to take advantage of routes where it's a little bit more dense.
Right.
So if Nauset is going through a neighborhood, that trash route is probably within that town.
Right.
And not, I don't see a driver going from, Provincetown to Wellfleet, back, Eastham, and then up to Orleans, and then circle back, go to Brewster, and then drop everything off in either, Eastham or Harwich. The routes are probably pretty standardized. I think there's enough business that they can, be in a more dense area and keep the trucks in the same place. Not to say that they can't go from, like, say, Truro in the morning and then head down to Provincetown in the afternoon, but I think their routes are dense enough where they're not doing that they're gonna avoid it if they can.
Do you know roughly what percentage of homeowners take their own waste to their local transfer
I do. So
station
when you
versus what percentage have a truck come by their house?
Yep,
pick up?
so the 2020-2021 solid waste feasibility study that I conducted with the Cape Cod Commission showed 67% of households utilize the drop-off facility or the municipal trash program.
Okay,
So-
2/3 then.
2/3, yeah, so it's under 35% where they're paying for a subscription service. And I'm not sure if it's because these are second homeowners. I'm not sure if it's because it's a cost barrier. To hire a subscription service to come to your household costs upwards of probably anywhere, a high range of $500 a year to over $1,000 a year, just for the convenience of it, versus paying for a transfer station sticker.
Right, which is a couple of $100, really, for us.
The transfer station here in I buy the recycling only sticker and I only pay $30 a year. And I utilize, in my condo complex, I utilize the trash there. So
Okay.
my waste is very low cost annually.
Yeah.
But I believe the Chatham transfer station charges, I think it's under $100 a year.
I think it's,
I think it's 200.
yeah, I think it's gone up,
I think
yeah.
it's 120, so
120?
I just saw it, I think it's
don't quote me
200.
on that.
It's going up, yeah.
Easy enough to find out.
But let me
Yeah.
ask you, but costs, so for the commercial haulers to dump, do you know what their fee is to dump in Chatham relative to Harwich or some other town?
The last
Towns,
time
or what-
I,
in Harwich's, because that's, open to all of them, relative rates they charge the haulers.
right, so I know, from what I've last been told, Chatham only allows the Chatham haulers to come through, the Nickerson, the Millie.
But that's the rule, but they can't really check,
Right, so the last time I was told they're paying about $90 a ton to tip.
yeah?
That is probably lower than what the town itself is paying when they take the trash to Reworld, to the incinerator. I'm not sure what Harwich is charging, say a Nauset to come through, or Eastham, but it's probably around the same range. But Harwich does, their program is a revenue-based, and that's why they do it. It's because Harwich makes money from allowing the commercial haulers into the facility.
So do they have is it cheaper, do they have a cheaper place that they haul the trash to than Chatham has?
So Harwich used to take it to ABC, which was a landfill, and now they're working with CMAS Covanta or Reworld. And so there really is no inexpensive way to tip your trash at this point. And most towns, all of the towns that I'm aware of, have contracts to tip their trash, where the towns don't have contracts for recycling, because recycling follows the commodity markets. So if you separate your waste, like the town of Chatham, they can follow the commodities rate and send it to different places that'll take it and recycle it, versus if you're single stream or if you have a contract, then there's no wiggle room to chase the commodity market.
How many years is a typical municipal contract?
So when I came on board in 2017, they were just ending a 20-year contract with CMAS
that long.
Covanta. Brewster was the only town that continued at a 20-year expansion of that contract. Everybody else went into like 5 years with an option, or they switched over to a different outlet.
Okay,
And that was all done in 2017, 2018.
okay. Pretty
So-
stable then, yeah.
Yeah, 20 years seems like a really long time, but when you think of how things are increasing exponentially financially, 20 years might be, but there's also escalators within the contract.
Okay.
So it might not just stay. When I came in, everybody had sort of the sweetheart deal of about $38 a ton to tip. I mean, we're talking at least 100 at this point. And that's up from 2017. So in the last 8 years, we've seen, a 2/3 increase on that total.
And there's no reason to think that's not gonna keep trending upward.
Yeah, I feel like once things go up, they don't really come down.
Yeah.
That's what I tend to see. So, but sometimes you see a plateau, a period of time where things have plateaued at a certain rate. But with the cost of trucking, the cost of rail haul, the cost of staff, it all tends to go up.
I can't believe that some of the Cape Cod waste ends up on a train to Alabama?
Yeah, some of it does. I can't tell you like specifically where. It's likely commercial waste, with the haulers, and it winds up on a train and it just keeps on going.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned landfills. Are there some existing landfills on the Cape?
Yep, just the Bourne landfill right now.
Born landfill, so they just dump it in the ground, surround it in plastic, and it just builds up, and then they transfer it somewhere? Is that what?
No, it stays in the town of Bourne, and it densifies. They have methane flares. Phil Goddard is the one that sort of runs that. He'll talk your ear off about how the technology there, it's like six lined layered with all the new technology. So even though we think of burying our trash as somewhat of an archaic way to do it, they have a pretty sophisticated system to protect, the groundwater, the community, from any type of leachate that could occur from, dumping trash into the
If you
ground.
go
and
back
burying
in
it.
time, is it a true statement that almost every town historically had their own local landfill?
Yep.
That probably was not a secure landfill in the sense that it had liners or clay layers or what have you. And then they filled it up to a certain height, and then they put the final cap on, and then they abandoned it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them put solar on top as a way to
Okay.
utilize the capped landfills.
I've even heard of golf courses being built on the top
Yeah,
of
public
old
parks. I lived in Cambridge when I first moved to the Commonwealth, and the park behind my home was built on a cap landfill. So, yeah, I mean, again, they're archaic, and we weren't as sophisticated in our knowledge as to what was happening when we were putting trash into the ground, even hazardous materials. Now we're a little bit more aware with the EPA, and looking at Superfund sites and those types of cleanups, back in the 70s when they implemented these like rules and regulations to help protect the environment and our groundwater, as well as, folks that live in the areas of the landfill. Because leachate going into drinking water sources can cause,
So there is ongoing perimeter groundwater well testing around all of these abandoned landfills.
yeah, they continue to have to test, yes.
Okay.
Yep, and all 15 towns do have a landfill. Chatham's one of them, they have a cap landfill here. I was just staring at the one in Barnstable the other day when I was working at the hazardous waste field, and there was a little coyote kind of limping around in the back end where the leaf and yard waste pile was, and they have a solar array on top of their landfill.
Okay.
Yep.
Can that capped landfill just exist there forever? Or does
Yeah.
it have a life? It can.
Yeah, there's no shelf life. The only thing that happens with them
Good to hear.
that I'm aware of for the most part are, because the methane continues to build up, they have methane flares to get rid of that so that you're not starting an underground fire from the densifying of the materials that are sitting there.
Yeah.
Because it does get hot.
And it's not enough methane to make it worthwhile to capture it?
You possibly could, but again, it's a cost benefit.
Yeah.
So if there are no outlets or energy credits that are willing to purchase that material, then it's not worth capturing it and then utilizing it as an energy source.
Okay.
Yeah, but you could use the methane gas to produce energy.
As a closed landfill gets older and older and older, does a lot of these things settle down and,
Yeah, it densifies. So when you think of things as they start to like crush and sit on each other, and at some point it'll come to a resting point. But I can imagine the cap landfill over a period of time when it's not being used or filled, you'll probably see, you'll
Yeah.
probably see a little bit of like a lowering of the height.
and whatever organic material may have been placed in there will biodegrade and
Yeah, the
dissipate?
organics will eventually biodegrade, but it takes longer because it's densified. And to biodegrade something, you usually need some sort of air.
Okay.
Or, that type of a source, you need oxygen. And so these are an anaerobic type situation, so it could take twice as long, 3 times as long for an organic material to break down when it's all tight and compacted than when it's sitting in an environment where it's meant to
Yes.
continue to biodegrade.
Interesting.
Fun facts, garbology. So again, I went over the plan with the solid waste master plan. So by 2030, we want to look at a reduction of 30% of our trash going out of that 5.7 million tons that leave the Commonwealth. And then by 2050, we want to look at a 90% reduction. And the way that you do that is you have to change the behaviors and the habits of what we're doing. You also need to look at EPR, reuse, deconstruction rather than destruction of buildings, current buildings, bridges. So you want to deconstruct them and reuse materials as you're able to versus just taking it all down and disposing of those. And then again, we want to develop local and regional markets for things like mattresses, the food scraps, glass, textiles, so that we're not continuously shipping them out and sending them to international markets.
When I go to the Chatham transfer station, I can't help but observe what other people are throwing in the floor, on the floor. And in many cases, they're not following the prescribed rules. I mean, you just look down there and you see cardboard, you see things that are on the floor that don't belong there. So I guess that's another challenge, is how do you educate and persuade and motivate your average citizen to be more compliant with,
Pay as you throw.
with what?
Took the words right out of my mouth.
Pay as you throw. It's a behavior change, and it's proven with data and statistics. And I know Rob is not a fan of it, and I respect that opinion.
So
But
what do you
pay as
say-
you throw is a behavior change.
Pay
So if-
as you throw.
Pay as you throw.
Yeah, I like to call it smart, save money and reduce trash. But what you do with it is pay as you throw means that the local grocery store, and Chatham would probably utilize the Harwich Stop and Shop and the Shaw's there, and you have a prescribed color bag. And if you want to buy a sticker to the transfer station as a resident, then you would buy these certain color bags that are labeled for your trash. And because you have to pay per each bag, it actually incentivizes you to not only think about what you're purchasing, but it incentivizes you to not put recyclables into that bag because you're filling a bag and you have to buy a new one because you're filling it to capacity. So it's a behavior change mechanism. Yeah. So towns with pay as you throw, like if you look at the towns that have this smart, it says smart communities, and they've got sort of those zigzags in them, they're a lot lighter on the scale than other communities because it lowers the amount of trash by about 40% that's generated.
Really?
Are there towns on the Cape that have pay as you throw?
Yep, Sandwich, Brewster, Wellfleet, the 6 towns of of Martha's Vineyard all have pay as you throw. And their trash rates are lower than some of the other communities on the Cape due to that.
And the town would save money in terms of how many tons they're hauling to the.
Yep. So it increases the recycling and lowers the amount of trash. It's not parallel, so it's not like you start here and it goes like this, but you'll start to see about a 40% reduction in trash and about a 25 to 30% increase in recycling. So for those folks who are not incentivized to do the right thing in the blue building, they're gonna start doing it because they're paying per bag. it's like a utility, like, you know, and you can create structure for community members with, you know, disabilities, veteran status, senior status, low income, where you provide a certain amount of free bags per year to them, because it's, you know, it's a utility. I pay in my home for how much electricity I use every month. I pay in my home for, you know, how many gallons of water I'm using through a water bill. So it's a utility. Trash is a utility. And right now, through an annual sticker, we're subsidizing other people's waste. So if I had a full sticker, which I don't, just because I have trash at my condo complex, and then I buy the recycling sticker to go to the transfer station, but if I bought a full sticker, then my full sticker rate is subsidizing, say, a family of 5 when I'm just one person. So that's why we look at it as kind of a utility, is what you're paying for what you generate,
Right.
or what a household generates. So, and that's another, you know, challenge is people come in and they say, well, I have a family of 6. Like, I'm gonna throw away a lot more trash. It's like, well, okay. You're generating it, you should pay for it. You're probably generating a lot more electricity as well, and a higher water bill as well. But you put systems in place to help assist vulnerable populations.
Right.
Yeah.
Carrie, we have a few questions online, but I'm going to hold those to the end of your
Okay.
presentation.
I mean, I can continue.
Yeah, let's continue and get to the end, and then we could ask,
Has that pay-as-you-go thing come up in Chatham? Has somebody pushed for it, or is it?
yes.
Yeah, I have heard it's come up in the past. I believe it was prior to me being here, so it's at least something that happened 8 years ago. Just now, people are starting to ask about it again. But again, you know, Ron is not necessarily, you know, a proponent of it right now, but
Who, did you say?
Rob,
Rob, I'm sorry, not Ron. You know, he's told me that he.
Requires probably extra manpower to monitor what people are doing, or?
It's just, for some reason,
Different.
it's not liked by residents, and so people feel forced out when they make that decision. It's a really, really tough lift to convince people that this is something,
Regulation, yeah.
yeah, that you can show them data, statistics, proof that this is a behavior change program, and people still, for some reason, don't like it. I lived in Sandwich. I loved it. I loved my little blue bag. But I generate a little blue bag about once every 9 weeks. So
Yeah.
I loved it. I didn't care.
yeah.
It worked for me. But I'm an expert on what's recyclable as well. So
True.
I'm really good about what to put in that blue bag.
This is called pay as you throw, not pay as you go.
Yeah, pay as you throw, or
throw.
smart, save money and reduce trash.
Okay.
So I'm not gonna go into the plastic stuff here. I mean, we know that there's a truth about plastic. I will say that statistically, we see all of these data points that mention that only maybe 9 to 10% of plastics globally are being recycled. We've seen it in the New York Times, the Boston Globe, we've seen it in the Cape Cod Times. And if you were to picture plastics, only about 85% of plastic is recyclable because of the content in which it's made up, the chemicals that are in those plastics. So if I were to put 100 pieces of plastic on the ground, maybe 15 to 20 of them would be recyclable. So then when you look at the fact that, say, 10 of the 15 are recycled, you've got a 2/3 recycling rate, which is actually very high. But when you're reporting it and you're saying only 10 to 15% of plastics globally are being recycled, they're leaving out that piece that a lot of plastics that are being manufactured are not recycled or not recyclable. So that's just one thing. We do, you know, a lot of plastic recyclers are starting to import plastics because they need them to continue to stay in operation. So it's not for a lack of us trying. And I wouldn't have a job if this stuff was not necessary. You know, everybody says, oh, they're not recycling anyway. It's like, well, recycling facilities wouldn't exist if they weren't making a profit. Those are for-profit entities. So thousands of variants on types of plastics, resistance from oil and plastic lobbyists. The chasing arrows don't really mean a whole lot. It's a form of greenwashing. There's a little bit of mixed messages about what is recyclable and what's not. Sometimes the infrastructure in certain areas, they can recycle one thing, but then in a different area, you can't recycle it because of the facility itself can't handle certain things. So there's a lot of variance with that. So the low-hanging fruit with a lot of things is food scraps and organics, because it makes up about 36% of our waste stream. So we have this composting desert that says we don't have infrastructure for large-scale composting here on the Cape, so we're shipping all that stuff out. And I'm working with Joint Base Cape Cod to remedy that issue. Again, it's gonna help provide services to the Upper Cape towns as well as the base community. But if we can provide a proof of concept and expand capacity and/or convince maybe the Mid-Cape or the Outer Lower Cape to also build a facility, we can start to gather that material stream and make an impact. So, just talking about priorities, cost, infrastructure, NIMBY, not my backyard. I want it here, but don't put it next to me. So there's a lot, looking at recovery for consumption. The cooperative extension where I work out of in Barnstable County has a food access coordinator. So instead of looking to just strictly take food and put it into the waste stream as compost, she's actually looking at recovering and rescuing food for human and animal consumption so that we're still prioritizing the edible food in a safe manner. I just got off of a call right before Judith and I were emailing, and I was like, wait, a presentation? And then again, we're a composting desert because we don't have the capacity to take high scale, high volume food waste and organics, with the exception of the leaf and yard waste piles that we see at the transfer stations. And some of the aggregate companies, Brewster Sand and Gravel and stuff, they look at the leaf and yard waste because it's a lot easier of a stream because it doesn't have that same ick smell factor that food does. So we've got a lot of programs. We've got transfer stations providing, the ability for residents to bring in their food scraps. We have a whole lot of different programs, whether it's glass recycling, mattresses, holiday strand lights, boat shrink wrap, latex paint, the hazardous waste events that we see every single year come through here. Black Earth is looking to expand their capacity here. That's where the town of Chatham has their food scraps picked up, and they drive it off Cape. And the thing of it is we're really looking at other haulers and opportunities, again, to expand capacity and to build infrastructure. So this is just more like stuff that's going on with different projects. Can we make it easier? Absolutely. Infrastructure, funding, people like us that are interested in and can bring momentum to the projects, and creating a culture of waste reduction. And I know that's hard. I don't have children. I'm in my 40s. And I can only imagine what a parent goes through when the latest and greatest is coming out, or a new brand or fast fashion or the second generation of whatever iPads and stuff that people want. So I have a little bit easier of a time honing in on my generation of trash, but I'm also an expert on what shouldn't go into the trash can. So that's my information, so anybody that's watching this or that will get the minutes.
Just one quick question. So
Absolutely.
At the Chatham transfer station, do they collect food waste separately?
Yep, they have a source separated food waste program, and Black Earth comes and picks it up.
Well, where is it?
It's in the recycling center, so when you go in there, when you drive down, the bins that say Discovery Books, and you can take textiles right there.
Yep.
It's right off to the left-hand side, right in front of, not in front, but kind of in front of the swap shop.
Right.
It's
I don't
kind
think
of
that-
on your
I don't think
way
that's-
down to, you park in the recycling area, you walk to the left.
Yeah.
Yep, it's right
And
there.
and you're heading down towards where you would take newspapers.
Yep, newspaper.
That's on the left side.
It's right there.
Big plastic bins with
And
hinged
you
lids.
put plastic bags full of food waste.
Compostable BPI bags you can, otherwise just dump it in.
I don't think that's is well known, actually. I could be.
I don't know if you're aware, but Chatham Recycles does a weekly column in the Chronicle or bi-weekly, and we often will put information about
Yeah.
the local composting, as well as some of the other reduction programs that we do, like our book swap, and we work with the library and do a fix-it clinic every year, again, to keep things out of the waste, not just throw them away and buy a new one. We've had 2 of those. We're going to have another one next fall. So we are doing things regularly to promote reuse
Yeah.
and recycling here in Chatham. And also, about 10 years ago, we did do a solid waste, we had a solid waste advisory task force that you were on. Were you on that?
Was I on it? I don't know. I don't remember.
I remember.
Whack, if it was, yeah,
SWAT, yeah, our SWAT team.
SWAT team.
And
don't
we
think so.
looked at pay-as-you-throw and other solid waste, disposal options and presented it to the select board. That report is available and I can provide it for all of you. I have a feeling one of our question people is going to bring that up as well.
Carrie, how large are the bags that you use for the pay-as-you-throw?
I think most communities start with an 8-gallon, 15-gallon, up to 33-gallon bag. So those are the large bags, but the towns typically like to give a choice to residents, and they usually come 10 bags per bag when you buy them. Yeah.
And all of that is decided by the town when they set up the program.
Yeah.
What the cost of the sticker is going to be, what the cost of the
Each
bag is
bag
going to
will
be,
be-
the size of the bag. And as Carrie said, you can also decide who
you
may
s-
get discounts or help with doing that.
You see that at the A&P, not the A&P, the Stop and Shop.
Yeah, those are for Harwich,
And they're
right?
color
Brewster,
coded,
the yellow
right?
bags are Brewster.
Brewster, okay.
And I've seen them, and I wonder, what's,
Do you pay for them?
I don't buy them because I live in Chatham.
Do, yeah, they can be,
I think the large
$3
bags are
a bag.
usually a couple dollars a piece. So if you have a bag of 10, you're paying $20 for, 10 bags. But those are the large scale size. But again, because you are paying so much for that bag, you're really thinking about what you're putting in there. So it's encouraging you to recycle because you don't want to put things that you shouldn't be throwing away in that bag. Whereas if you have a hefty bag, you're just going to put whatever you want in there.
Okay, that's great.
Not always. I
That's
don't
great
want to say that
information.
everybody just willy-nilly throws everything away.
That's great information. Let's take questions from the public and online.
Elaine,
We'll
do
cycle
you want to
back
go
if there's any
first?
more board questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Elaine Gibbs. This has been an interesting discussion.
As you know, when Rob Faley was here, I had suggested, and I still believe it, that we have become a regional transfer station. And that's because the commercial haulers we use, there's 3 of them. They not only pick up our trash, but they bring trash from Brewster, Orleans, Harwich, and other surrounding communities. Rob Faley actually said, now, tonight we hear that Harwich accepts, trash from their commercial haulers, but apparently they're bringing it to us because they said that otherwise it's expensive for them either to take it, I guess, down to Bourne or across the bridge. So they're bringing it to us. And that's why we have so much garbage. And I think what was interesting that I heard is that Chatham appeared on the map as red, and that was the map of shame until they separated out those of us who have permits to dump.
Yes.
So I would contend that we went from whether it's white or yellow, which is good, to red, and the red is because of the non-permit people who are the commercial haulers. They are bringing in not only garbage, but construction material into our tipping room, our tipping building. And that concerns me because we're going to be spending $4 million to redo that place, in the phase 2. I don't know how much is going to the tipping floor, but that is going to be temporary unless we change our policy about who can dump what from where. I would also contend that probably if it was really just Chatham residents that are dumping their construction materials and garbage here, we wouldn't need to go to that pay-as-you-go or whatever it is. Because I think Chatham full-time residents know what they're doing. They separate it out. There are boxes in there, but it's corrugated boxes that have to go in the recycling, not just a regular small box. If that's changed, is fine. But right now, I think most people are following the rules. I think also some issues take place with summer renters, we have a massive increase in the summer. And I don't think they follow the rules. They get a temporary permit for the summer, which I believe they can buy, or they pay as they go. They dump their trash and they're not following the rules. So I think those are the people that need to be educated, these summer renters or whoever hauls, and the commercial haulers. I mean, this is getting out of hand, that Chatham has become a regional transfer station, and we never voted on that. We have built this and tried to maintain it. It used to be a lovely transfer station. It really was. It was great, with those seagulls, chirping to keep away, all kinds of stuff. And it's not anymore. And it's because of the odors that are created by the massive garbage that we are receiving by the commercial haulers from all the surrounding towns, including Harwich. So they may promote it that they are accepting it, but they're not taking it off Cape. We are.
Yes.
And it's because it's cheaper.
So with that,
So,
keep going, Elaine.
Yeah, Elaine, it's Noble.
Yeah.
How do we know that other towns are bringing their trash to Chatham? I don't think Mr. Fairley really checks at all, but how do we know other towns are coming here? It was interesting to find out that Harwich is actually open as a business to bring their trash there.
well,
how do we-
East Ham.
How do we
As is
know it's
East
coming
Ham.
from other towns? Where does that come from?
because the 3 commercial haulers that we have, okay,
Yeah,
that haul garbage and are also the commercial haulers for the surrounding towns. And
Doesn't mean,
Yeah,
they know that they're not supposed to bring it here, so
Yeah,
just
but you have
because they
no way
haul
of
in other towns does not mean that they bring it to Chatham. We don't know that they do. You're just assuming that, but I don't,
I think that the general feeling is based on the amount of trash that is coming from them into our transfer station is not all from Chatham. It's construction material and it's tremendous amounts of garbage. And they have not denied that when they go around to different towns and pick it up, and Harwich has said that it comes to Chatham because it's cheaper. I mean, that's what Mr. Faley said. So the commercial haulers are bringing it, but that's what you were going to put in place, or Mr. Faley said, some way of making them sign something to confirm that their loads do not have any commercial or construction material or garbage from any surrounding towns, that it's only Chatham, and then to do the spot checking to make sure. That's the only way we're going to find out for sure. But I would suggest that Chatham, a town of 6,000, even though we have summer residents, cannot possibly produce the amount of garbage that's in that building on any given day. We simply can't. We're a very small town. So it's coming from somewhere, and the commercial haulers, and Brewster sends it somewhere because they don't allow anything from commercial haulers. So it's coming to us.
yeah, well, I think
That,
one of the purposes of what we're doing now is to try to beef up the application form to try and address that issue, actually, of trash from other towns. And the other thing we can
Right,
find out is
because-
the cost differential is not, I don't think we know that that Chatham is necessarily cheaper. We don't actually know that, but that was something that we could find out, actually.
should we go on to?
Well,
I think Mr. Faley did mention once about raising commercial trash fees, and I don't think it was just to make money. I think it was to get it on par with other towns.
It's incentive, yeah.
Yeah.
he did say that Harwich, it's more expensive for them to haul it themselves off Cape. So, I mean, I think we can conclude that that's why it's coming to Chatham from the commercial haulers. And we've never said before, you cannot bring, to my knowledge, until this discussion this year, commercial haulers cannot bring waste from other communities into Chatham. So clearly, that has probably been going on, and I think it's worthwhile to tell them they can't do it, and that there will be audits. Because we can't be doing that. We're going to have to redo that tipping floor in another 5 years, because it's not going to get any better if that continues.
Yeah, well, I think the old application form was, I think, weak in that regard as to dealing with trash from other towns. So that's going to be beefed up, but,
Yeah,
other-
and
Yep, we
I
have
think
another question.
yeah.
I'm just saying, the fact that we were white with the permit people and we're red without it means something's coming from somewhere,
Okay.
and it's not us.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so we're only asking for data for residents, so it was artificially high because we were getting all of the data when we only wanted household information. So that's what really happened. If you wanted to see the difference between now, because at the gatehouse, they keep track of that. So you'd be able to ask Rob for residential figures and then ask him what the commercial loads are every year that come through that scale and see what the difference is.
Great idea.
Yeah, you can
Okay,
ask
thank
them
you.
separately because they track it separately. They were just reporting both, not understanding I didn't want all of the information, I just wanted the residential information. So it made it artificially high.
Right.
Yeah, but you can ask
Okay.
Ron, what's the commercial numbers?
Yeah, because we're actually receiving it, so we are red, but not for permitted
Yeah.
household residential.
Yeah.
So
When you
I
only,
think we want to get that red down.
yeah, when you look at 2024's map, which I should have updated this, you can actually see that you're now green on the map, and that's where you want to be.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Elaine. Is- are there other-
Yep, there's another question. Paulette?
Hi, Paulette Failing, Chatham Recycles. How about we talk to the haulers? Maybe the Board of
can't
Health
hear.
and
Can you
Judy
speak up a
can
little
talk-
bit for us?
We can barely hear you.
I'm so sorry. Can you hear me better now?
Yep.
A little.
Is that better? That's as high as mine goes. Can you hear me now?
Yep, go on, Paulette.
Okay, Chatham Recycles, Paulette Failing. I suggest Board of Health and Judy talk to the haulers and ask them where they're picking up from before they come to Chatham. And you know, these are people we know, these are families we know. I think they'll tell you the truth. And if not, you get something in writing saying what you want them to do. Not only corrugated cardboard is not allowed in the blue building, regular cardboard also, like cereal boxes and things. I think that if you want to try to get pay as you throw it through, the last time we didn't have this capacity situation, and I think it's critical. And I think that if people know that our trash from Massachusetts is going to Alabama, they would have a whole different view of pay as you throw. Let's see what else. Pay as you throw is passive motivation instead of something kind of hardcore like mandatory recycling, because it's basically telling the user that they can save money if they want to recycle. If they don't want to recycle, they won't save money. People always have trouble with change. That's why one of the reasons why pay as you throw is so difficult to pass. But usually when it passes, well, always when it passes, it saves money and it increases recycling and it decreases trash. Let's see, I think that was it. The Energy and Climate Action Committee is also taking a look at pay as you throw, because the Cape Cod Commission has advised it as a way to address climate change. And that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, Paulette, did you say you were representing a certain group or just a resident?
Well, both, but Chatham Recycles, I was the chairman of the SWAT committee back in 2013.
Chatham
And
Recycles? Yeah.
yes, sir. Yeah.
11 years ago, though.
Thanks,
Okay,
Paulette.
great. Thank you very much.
Thank you both.
Sure.
All right.
Carrie,
Yes.
excuse me, Carrie, wonderful presentation. That's an awful lot of great information. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Thanks, Paulette. I think that's it for questions.
Okay, then we can take it back to the board. Any follow-up thoughts or questions? If that, while Paul, Harry is here, and then we'll,
Are we going to talk about one of the handouts we got that had suggested wording on the application?
Yep, we can do that. If you just want to, if you have any more questions for Carrie, otherwise we can dismiss her. But we do have solid waste regs here in Chatham. They haven't been updated in many, many years. But they do say that commercial waste has to be only from Chatham
Okay.
the
residents.
regs
So
say that.
the regs do
The
say that.
application was kind of
But
weak on that.
the application did not have anything that
Well,
clarified
They
that.
didn't really
So
attest to the fact that that's what they were doing.
we're going to make
And
it,
there's,
Yeah.
No penalties attached to it.
Okay, so there's no fee schedule. So that's one of the things that I can help do. I help communities create comprehensive private hauler regulations that levels the playing field for haulers that service your community. And by doing that, we can get more grant points through the town because you have those comprehensive regulations that DEP recognizes as above best management practices.
Well,
That's good, we can
Are there-
look at that.
Do other towns assign fees,
Yes.
penalties if they're not, if they're found to not
Yep.
comply with the
I mean,
rules?
they typically start with a verbal warning, a written letter, and then they start going with, if you do it this many times, then we'll cancel
But that
your
would-
permit.
That would be written down in the regulation.
in the
So
regulation.
that it's up there, up front, yeah.
Yep.
And ultimately, at the discretion of the board or something, they could lose their license.
Yep, absolutely.
Right.
Not that you want to do that, but I mean,
yeah,
things should be in place.
I feel very strongly that there ought to be very, very clearly written wording that the haulers are required to certify and check off.
Yeah, that's what this is.
Yeah, before
But
they,
Yeah, what we,
Is that what Carrie's saying? She can prepare that document for us.
right.
right.
All right.
We
I
we
can-
work with her.
Yeah, I would have to sit down with Carrie and maybe Rob and look at our existing solid waste regs and go through them, and maybe we could,
That sounds like a perfect solution.
it does.
But I'm
In the
thinking of-
meantime, I think doing this to get, because it's not gonna happen right away, for us to create new regs, it's gonna take time. I would like to get something like this attestation that, for an application.
But then aren't we creating confusion because we're gonna give this, and then a month later, we're gonna give them something new?
Well, it's not gonna be a month later. I mean, to create new regs, it
Well,
could take
I
6
just
months
think it
or
ought
a
to
year.
be in capital letters, maybe even red. I mean, it ought to be very bold
Right.
in a way that is the driver that pulls into the scale gonna be asked to initial on the spot, or is this an application?
This is an
annual-
application, yeah,
Okay. I'd almost go to
to
the
start
point
with, yeah.
where you ask the driver to get out of the truck and initial something that attests that he is bringing, if he wants, just make him declare the truth.
I mean, we'd have to talk to the
With each
people that
load, you mean.
operate the
I
transfer
would do it by load. I would have him, I'd have him, if he wants to perjure himself, right? I mean, and we catch him, then that's a serious,
There is no penalty in this either.
There is,
Where is there a penalty?
I don't think
yeah,
it's.
there was
it's
no
not
penalty,
Right.
no penalty.
included. But one thing is, so this is part of an ongoing
But they
discussion,
could,
I think.
yeah,
One distinction is that the application is, as I understand it, you correct me, Judy, is something that Judy can change on her own.
right. That's an
If-
annual,
If we
though.
change our regulations,
annual.
which might be required with more information, that requires a public hearing and a, public notice, and it's a process.
It depends on the town charter. Some towns, the Board of Health can just go in and create an addendum
To,
to the regulations. And then in some towns, they require an open meeting as well as the approval of a select board. So it just depends on the charter within the town.
yeah.
But I've sat with towns where they changed their regulations and a couple weeks later, they were posted.
But I mean,
Yeah.
every hauler, every truck driver that pulls on that scale knows where he came from to fill that truck. And if we can get to the point where there is you hand him a clipboard, and you have the guy sign his name and check off the box and attest to the origin of that load, with the understanding that if he better tell the truth, and then you notify the business he works for at an earlier point in time, beginning a certain date, the town of Chatham's procedures will be changed in a way that every truckload will be required to certify the origin of what is in that truckload. And then it's not hard, once that truckload is dumped on the floor, To have somebody just look at it with a,
Yeah, that's the manpower thing.
I mean,
Well, but as I understand it, we would have the owner of the hauler sign
Sign
this.
this.
the annual.
Okay, but then in addition to that, have a clipboard for the driver.
That's what I would do.
I can't see how difficult that would be. I mean, you
If-
got a clipboard, you write your name,
And the
then
date.
I attest, and you put a check.
Exactly.
I think that would be very simple.
Let me ask you one question. Is there a renewal date for the haulers? One date in the year when they sign their application?
It was a calendar year.
Calendar year? Is it a
It's-
renewal
yeah,
date?
Yes, it expires December 31st, so they start,
December thir-
they'll
Calendar
start
year.
renewals
So we
in the
have until
fall.
December 31st then to make a
Yeah,
change?
yep.
Because we can't change it until the next application comes. So, yeah, we don't have to pin this down today. I think there's a lot of questions.
I mean, I can ask Rob, you know, I can definitely work with him about having somebody sign something at the gate. I
Tell
mean,
him
he'd
this
have
is,
to- Yeah,
this is something the
It's a
Board of Health would
concern
like
and-
to be looked
yeah.
at, and would strongly like to have his support on it.
yep. Should we let,
Yeah, Rob
There
has
we
a
go.
lot of great, I mean, he's great, I mean, honestly. We just have a difference of opinion on pay-as-you-throw. But again, that's respectable, most people follow, you know, Rob's sort of frame mind. So I don't wanna make it sound like he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. He's great, I love working with him, and
Okay.
we do grants together, and he's definitely working on, you know, improvements as we go. This is just a really tough, I mean, I'm not asking anything, I don't think the board is right now either of anybody, but pay-as-you-throw and private hauler regulations are the best way to be able to lower your trash rates.
Your pay-as-you-go, that would be a big thing because a lot of people perceive it
Pay-as-you-throw.
as regulation. But
Yeah.
changing the application form, making it real strict with an attestation part where they pledge to follow the rules and they know what the rules are, that we can do and do it before December.
Yeah, you could probably do that
Probably
internally,
not
I'm
get it
sure.
done today.
Yep.
We probably put it on the agenda for next week. Dick Edwards will be back. He might have something to say about it.
okay.
And what about a penalty?
And
We can add that, we'd have to change the regs, but I think we have,
Enough time.
yeah, we can, I'll work with Carrie, Carrie and I'll have a discussion and see
Yeah.
what the best way to move forward would be.
I could show her
have
what a
Rob come back or-
comprehensive reg would look like, and then you can discuss if that makes sense for the town.
Okay.
Now, have you done regulations for other towns on the Cape?
Yep, so Falmouth just passed theirs, Mashpee's working on theirs with their Board of Health right now, Eastham, Provincetown, Wellfleet, I mean,
Okay,
they all
a
come
lot
to
of
me
Do you
at
have
some point.
like an application, a town application for other towns that's really strict for that the haulers sign? You don't see that,
I can ask them for them.
because that would be good to get to Judy as
Yeah,
information.
see what other
Yeah,
towns are
when
doing.
I work with her, I'll show her what the, you know, there's an expectation, the town can do what they want, right? But when you want it to hit the threshold that you can earn money for having comprehensive private hauler regulations that include mandatory recycling for all generators, meaning businesses and residents, manufacturing, anybody in the town, that you have a bundled price, which means your haulers can't say trash costs this, but recycling costs this. It's a bundled price and a bundled service. And that you have a fee schedule that says if you fail to do this, we're rejecting loads and we're charging you.
Penalty schedule.
Penalties, yep. We call them fee schedules, but it's a penalty.
So, and it would make sense for the fee to be equal to other towns, so there's not
Yep.
an incentive to bring things here, but we're not trying to make money off it or be a regional transfer center by any means either.
Right.
Okay.
But that's part of it.
So,
Okay, well, that's great.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is, we'll let Judy get some more information, talk more with Carrie,
that's okay. I said Ron. Sorry, Rob.
and see what Rob has to say. Maybe he'd like to come back and talk to us again, but maybe not.
I'm sure he
And
will.
we'll have it on the agenda for, I think our next meeting is the end of the month or whatever, so we'll work on it. I mean, we have till December, I think, really, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's good to know.
well, we
Okay.
have till really
Well,
more
yeah.
like October.
And I think that if we make these changes, it would be good to send out a letter to the haulers saying, we're tightening up. the
Effective a certain
rules.
date.
Look very carefully at the application this year.
Mm-hmm.
There's gonna be some more things you have to know about and sign and regulations, so nothing should,
There's only
take away
three,
your
right?
business,
Yeah, I
but
mean,
just
giving
tighten
them the
things
heads up
for
is
the
always
town.
best practice, right?
Yeah,
Letting them know that the changes are coming.
Great.
Thank you very much,
I know the
Carrie.
haulers, they're great too, so.
Any more questions? Oh, that's great. Thank
Thank
you
you
very
very
much.
much
That
for
was terrific
coming.
information. I don't think
You're
we've
welcome.
ever heard all that before.
I
knew-
can
that's
give
why I
you
invited
a ton
you.
more.
Every time I
Anytime.
talk to Carrie. I
Now
learn
you're best
something.
friends with Judy, so that's perfect. Okay,
All right,
Check that one off.
we're gonna keep going on that.
all right, so, number two, already to number two. Review discussion of bedroom definition.
So,
And Judy
yeah.
sent out some stuff, she can talk about it. I think this also is something that we want to do, tighten up the language. It's difficult, there's a lot to it, there's no time constraint on it. So I think, to me, today is a discussion, information, think about things, and we're gonna also work this out over time. We're not gonna solve this today with the precise language. That's the
So
way
I
I look at it.
I sat down with Lucas, because him and I do, as well as you folks, do a lot of the reviews of the plans that come in, including our real estate inspection reports, and we have to figure out what's a bedroom and what's not, and, you know, we, struggle with the same things you do on a daily basis. So we tried to make some changes, that kind of reflect, what we're seeing and what your concerns are, especially with the full bathrooms, and the, detached rooms and rooms over the garages. Also the what we find with, a lot of times the plans come in and they say unfinished bonus room or unfinished basement, but what they're doing is they're roughing them. They're roughing the plumbing in, and they're, I don't know what the correct terminology is, but they're drywalling and not putting any flooring down. Well, you don't need a building permit to come back in and finish that.
A loophole.
To paint and floor, and if the plumbing is already there, they get a plumbing permit, which I don't ever see.
Yep.
Nobody else looks at except the plumbing inspector, and he just, you know, signs off everything, so, as long as it meets the plumbing code. So what we're finding is we're going back, when these real estate inspection reports are coming in, and finding finished rooms over garages that have full bathrooms, and we're like, well, that wasn't approved by us.
Right.
So we're having to
When-
have them take rooms out of other parts of the house, take walls down, and believe me, realtors do not like that.
You've actually ordered some of that?
Oh, we do it all the time.
No
Take out,
kidding.
When is this
take
inspection?
out barn doors where people put up barn doors where they're supposed to be 6-foot cased openings.
Okay.
When are these
Finished rooms,
inspections occurring? Is this at
real estate
transfer
inspection
or
for transfers, yep.
transfer?
And
And
we
you
re-
go back and see what was done
We
before?
require now, as of about a year ago, I think, that they submit floor plans with every real estate transfer report, and Lucas he researches the file, and if he sees something that looks off, he looks in the building file, so
This is
that's,
wonderful.
that's
'cause
where we're
actually,
catching these.
You're gonna learn all the little tricks
And we've learned them.
that are being
And so I
pulled.
tried to reflect those in the changes I put in here.
Well, the builders and the engineers are definitely building to the precise language of our rules. I mean, that's
Yes.
pretty clear.
Yes.
But let me ask you, you don't need a bathroom to make a room a bedroom,
Right.
No.
no. So,
But what we're seeing is that they're putting 7-foot cased openings in with full baths off of these rooms. And then when we go back and look at these rooms,
Years later, all of a sudden, that
they have
6-foot
barn
case-
doors on them.
Right.
And even the short-term rental inspector's seeing that.
Yeah.
So she's catching those.
Yeah.
So we have to be, it's almost like a cat and mouse game, because, you have to figure out what is being done to work around our regs, and then how do we plug that, to the degree we can, with the wording.
That's what I tried to get here.
Right.
Basically.
red is the change.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things I just cleaned up, and that where I crossed out, under F, or down below F, I crossed out lofts with one wall. That shows up further down again.
Did we get 2 of these? Did you give,
Yeah.
did you get a, se-
I sent you a second one, because the first one, the one in your packet says Chatham Transfer Station on it.
Oh,
I'm so good
but
at
the
editing.
content was okay?
rest of it's the same.
Content was perfect. so,
Okay,
It
thank
was
you.
the same, yeah.
Well, yeah, I think, looking through it, I mean, there's a number of things. First of all, this phrase, providing privacy. Now, we go beyond that and sort of, we have an interpretation of what privacy is when we talk about staircases and stairwells and railings and lofts and all that. But it's, a lot of that we just do by precedent and feel, I guess.
Right, and I
So
picked up on
is there
that
so-
at the end.
Is there, I mean, to me, this thing of what privacy is, that's a loophole that they're using. The other thing that I've seen in another town is, and I lost where it was, but they have a rule where a room above a certain number of square feet is presumed to be 2 bedrooms, no matter what kind of a hall and what you have, it's big enough. We saw one plan where there was a
30
giant
feet.
room, and there was like a front and a back, and then there was a entrance in between, and it actually, they had 2 they had a double bed on each side. But I've seen that
queen bed on
on
each
another
side.
town, that beyond a
They
certain number of
betrayed
square
their own
feet,
truth,
it's
right?
presumed to be 2 bedrooms. And this thing about lofts, if you have a loft and there's a railing, but there's one little staircase up there, and it's a railing, and it's tucked back somewhere,
Who cares?
is that privacy or not privacy? Can a loft be a bedroom?
Yeah, and what do
And
you
the
mean by
other thing
open
that's exploited
stairway?
is great rooms.
Yep.
So you have a great room, and there's a kitchen, there's a dining room, there's a living room, and then some is just one room, but some have outcroppings, they'll have cabinets, and they'll have half walls, and they'll have pillars, and this and that, and this town of Hingham has some rules that are really good. Sometimes they have language where you presume that that's 3 rooms, because that's the way it's set up, and there's enough of a obstruction from getting to one part to another, that it really functions like 3 rooms. Anyway, I think those are things that I sort of saw, and I'll get out to everybody, and Judy, this town of Hingham, which I think struggles with the same thing, they've got a whole document that just has to do with how they're dealing with the size of houses and bedrooms and the use concerning septics. And the goal is an estimate of the total number of people using the place. Bedrooms is the big measure, but there's other things that go into it as well. So, but we'll try and get this out to everybody so they can
Yeah,
look
this
at
is
it.
good, I'll
But I
review
didn't want to,
this.
so anyway, go ahead, I'm just, that was my 2
Well,
cents.
I mean, if you go through this, what I did, at the bottom of the first place, it says rooms over freestanding garages or outbuildings, meaning not attached to the house, that have heat and bathroom. I put full or half bath, that provide privacy are considered bedrooms. Rooms over attached garages with direct access to the house that provide privacy are considered bedrooms.
Right.
So again, the privacy thing is the doorway. We've kind of gotten around that by saying cased openings. But if they have a bathroom in them, we can consider that a bedroom.
Well, can you, if it's
By
if it's a room over a
definition.
garage with a little staircase, and it doesn't have a bath, then it's not a
And
bedroom?
it's open to below, then usually I wouldn't consider that a bedroom, because when you,
What if
you
it's-
know,
what
a
if
lot
it's
of those, you have to come down
What
through
if
the
it's an
kitchen, up
attached
the hall.
garage where you can walk
It's
into
still
a
a
hallway
bedroom.
inside or something? I don't know.
And what's to prevent them from putting a door at the top of the stairs?
Well, you can
Well,
never
again,
prevent
it's
what
if
they do
there's an
later.
open stair, if there's an open railing and no casement to put a door on, I mean,
I think the thing that doesn't lie is the bathrooms.
yeah,
If they.
I really do.
If they locate bathrooms in space, even if, I mean, that ought to be a strong factor to declare that space a bedroom.
even though it's not part of, well, it would be
I'm
part
just
of our
saying it-
definition, but, yeah.
I'm just saying particularly if it's a full bathroom.
Yeah.
Then it's like, are you kidding me? I mean, somebody's gonna be living in there and sleeping in
That
there.
comes up, in the last one we had,
Right.
it was an ensuite full bath, and we questioned whether this room was a bedroom, and the engineer said, what if we make it not a full bath, but just a bath?
So we let 'em go with a half
Will that be okay? And we
bath.
said, okay, but see, but on the
So-
other hand, if you have a room without a bathroom at all, it can still be a bedroom.
Correct.
It can, but sometimes these rooms are occasionally you see them, that they're so far away from the rest of the living space. You'd have to walk down the stairs.
Yeah.
Halfway through the kitchen, around the,
What difference does that
no,
make?
you know, in the olden days, right, we lived like that. But
The chamber
Teenagers
pots.
nowadays,
would love it.
No chamber pots anymore.
Well, I think, but part of it is, we have to understand that the architects and the engineers, and I don't begrudge them, they're working for their clients, but they're trying to maximize the house they can build within the rules.
Right.
And so they, you know, they push them. And in terms, we did go and ask for architectural plans, although we don't always get really good architectural plans, and sometimes we get architectural plans without distances on them, you know.
Right.
So.
right, I
that
have
is
to be
something we
better
have to
about
really firm about
making sure they
because
give us that.
We're getting.
If you go to the second page, under, it's the second paragraph, lots or bonus rooms with one wall, open to below, or open stairway shall be considered bedrooms. However, shall not be considered bedrooms. However, any room with a full bathroom adjacent will be considered a bedroom if the Board of Health considers the room to have sufficient privacy.
Right,
That
and
was
there-
kind of my
there's that phrase,
stab at getting at that
The Board
problem.
of Health considers the room to have sufficient privacy, so that's subjective based on what we
Yes.
think.
Right.
Some people will look at it and say, that's a bedroom. And then you get into an argument about, well, why, and this, it's hard, but I don't know what words you can use.
Well, I mean, I think it's
that's
pretty,
about as best as you can do, really.
yeah,
Well, I think we need to look at some other towns, because like this town of Hingham has really worked at it.
I really liked the last paragraph that you put in terms of you taking the total number
Well,
of
that,
rooms.
that exists. We don't, we sort of forget about it.
Well, but the worst plans that I can remember seeing came 2 or 3 weeks ago where, you know, they had a yoga room and an exercise room and a meditation room and on and on. I mean, there probably were 14 rooms in the house.
Oh, no, the best one I saw was a sewing room.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, we gotta have a sewing room.
And I think
tell
if
me
you-
one of the new people that have a sewing room.
Yeah,
But if you would have applied that definition, I think that would have tripped them up. Or if you have the square footage of the home, I think that ought to help.
Can
If
we
you-
work this in a way that says, I don't know if I can get this straight, but if we look at that decision of how many bedrooms, and we work it 2 or 3 different ways, and
You
we
take
say
the
it's the
highest
maximum,
one,
it's the
yeah.
highest one.
That's what I've always done, and I do usually try and count the total number of
You
rooms
do.
when I'm trying to
You're
figure.
kinda doing that
And if
now?
you know, if I come up with a number that's higher than what I'm counting in individual rooms, then
Should
I
our,
would take the higher number.
should our regulation so declare that?
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe we should say, you know, the number of defined bedrooms shall be determined by the most, you know, the highest number of these
Well,
3
You know, it
methods.
at least allows you to quantitate a little bit. And I think there's a certain amount of logic associated with it as well. And you would certainly get rid of some of the really crazy ones that have come before us.
Well, this is what we want to do. When we're sitting here agonizing on a dilemma,
Yeah.
and then we always go, oh, we got to go back and clarify, you know, but for now, we got to live with this. We
And I
wanna
don't,
avoid
you
that.
know, I'm actually anxious to really get a good look at this Hingham one and read
you
it,
heard about
because
that one?
this, no, I haven't, and
But they have a
probably
whole
should've-
document that just justifies what they're doing, and, you know, the
Right.
total amount of use and people, and some of
because
it's-
we're
some of
getting
it's pretty
mishmashy
strict.
here, this is
So are you
getting,
gonna send out the
Yes.
Hingham
Yes.
document?
And then maybe you can send that out like.
I'll find it and send it out to
I
you
couldn't
tomorrow.
Okay.
forward it for some reason. And then, because but there's other stuff out, and I forget which town has a square footage thing. Because we saw that one
Really?
giant bedroom on a plan a while ago. It went front to back, and there was like a
Why would that be?
a 6-foot hallway
what's the
with,
benefit of
with a stair
because
coming
they
into it,
counted
and
it
then
as
2 sections,
one
and the plan had
Right.
a bed, double bed or queen bed, in each side, as
I
if
think
it
they were
were.
gonna put a bowling alley in there.
The best thing,
Oh, maybe for kids,
The
right?
best
And
thing I
multiple
have
beds,
seen
throw the
recently-
kids up there and have enough beds that would be far more than.
best thing I've seen recently was a basement, which wouldn't meet the definition of a bedroom because it didn't have egress windows and natural
Right.
light and ventilation. But they had built, they called them in the building plan shelves.
I saw
But when we
that.
got back, when we
The
got it for,
beds.
they were built-in bunks. They were
Bunk beds,
Which is common now.
like in a submarine,
like,
what you'd
that's
have in a
creative.
submarine.
Yeah,
The Hingham plan
Yes.
says if
Yeah,
half
like on
of
a
the
ship.
base is above ground level,
They called it.
yeah, that's
then,
from the,
then
buil-
then it's a.
that's from
Shelving.
the housing code.
Okay.
I guess for
Yeah.
the
For bodies,
So-
for body shelves.
bodies.
And we count total number of rooms, now with the great room, that's the kitchen and the dining room and the living room and all, then it's one, that counts as one room, which is.
And I did
kind of-
ask the assessor how they
Makes you
count
feel
those.
queasy.
And she said that if it's one open room with no structure dividing the room, she counts it as one room. So if you
Structures-
had a kitchen dining area, that would be one room. If
What
there
if
was,
it's open to the living room or
no, I
family
would
room?
count that as two. I would say
Right.
It's
kitchen
the
dining one,
functionality of the
two,
space that, I
the
guess.
family room would be two. So,
But
yeah,
that other town regulation, Hingham, if you have cabinets that come in the room like a counter, or if you have pillars or a half wall, they count that as functionally dividing the room, so you can count it as separate rooms.
okay.
So now, you know, if we make some language, they'll design it to that language, but still.
Yep.
And then Judy has, I mean, there's a way that's being done, I'm not saying it's wrong, but she has a way of making subjective things about, you know, to have sufficient privacy. But then when they come in here and they start arguing, we have to sort of justify it, which gets hard. So what, the idea, I think, would be to try and create some, it's not easy, but
Yeah.
we can try regulations that sort of back up what you're doing. Anyway, and I don't think we're gonna solve it today, but I think we'll get this Hingham thing out, and then people can think about it, they can sort of research it themselves. I'll try and find out what town has this square footage thing, because I think that's pretty easy, and it's not onerous, it's,
It's
big enough
It's
that
at least objective,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And then, but other questions or comments about how we go about this, or, I mean, I agree it's hard, but I think we should try.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And, so this is the, and we don't have, there's not a application, there's not a deadline, I mean, we wanna get it done, but we don't have to do it this month, but we have a meeting at the end of the month, and did we not have any variances this month, or we just, we
Nope.
saved it for,
No variances.
well, I think since we tightened up on some of the rules, we're not getting as
Maybe
many
we're gonna-
variances for,
Well, the
extra
lot
bedrooms,
size change and
which
our
is,
nitrogen loading regs.
in my
make
mind,
it
is
good,
good,
so.
okay?
Excellent,
That's a
thank
good
you.
start, I think, huh? All right.
Yes.
Or Judy, I don't know. And then we have minutes from March 17th. Anybody have
What
a,
about the number 3?
what?
Update.
Oh,
Update on McGrath.
yeah, right. Oh,
I'm
yeah, yeah,
sorry.
sorry. Three, we
yeah.
have three. Oh,
we
Update,
did
that.
McGrath, so there was an executive meeting, the select board have, so some of that is, you know, not public information, but Judy's gonna tell us.
Judy could tell us, but she'd have to kill us,
Yeah.
Okay.
right?
Can't really tell you much because it's still an ongoing legal proceeding. The select board are looking at moving forward in some of the ways we've discussed before. But right now, we're still working out the details.
The protocol, or have you
Protocol.
talked through how do we establish the RFA and how do we measure? I mean, have you gotten into that stuff
We
yet?
haven't really yet.
Okay.
There's some other stuff on the table, but it's all good. It's all still moving forward, but like I said, I can't really discuss it because it was,
How's our current lawyer, the town lawyer?
he's excellent. He's very good. Yeah.
He's now helping us navigate
Yep.
through this?
He seems experienced in this sort of thing.
And they came up with some good suggestions and ideas, I felt like, so, I think it's all moving forward, but, you know,
Can we say,
Timeline,
can we say
What?
that
a
the,
timeline of when,
well, that's my famous question. When
But
do you
it's
think it
kinda
would
hard
happen?
to do that.
In 3 months? The last time I asked that question, the answer was November.
How often is this work group meeting?
there is really no work group. I mean, it's town staff that are working on it
Okay,
with the
that
lawyer.
group.
Yeah.
How often is that group
When
convened?
there's something to decide, you know, I can't tell you more. There is no set schedule for us to meet.
Okay.
So as soon
So
as I
who-
know
who is-
something else and
who
there's
would be-
some action to be taken, we will move forward.
Who's sort of the chairman of this effort? Or
There's no
who's
chairman.
in
Where
charge?
it's, you know, it's staff. It's community development director, myself, Greg Berman, Director of Natural Resources.
So
It's gotta
from
be a
our
Jill-
standpoint,
Jill sits in
Greg
on
would be
it.
the point man for us at the top there.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, so is the select board so
Police,
generally
fire.
moving ahead with what we're trying to do? Are they taking the next step and agreed?
My understanding is that's what they voted on, yeah.
Is there a select board liaison, or does the whole select board
It's the whole select board, yeah.
is at the table? I
Well,
mean,
they were
or
for the executive session. No, not for our staff meetings.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
So I think it's important
It's
for us
the
to
attorney moving ahead
It's,
with
it's
whatever
the
he has to
attorney
do.
and the staff, the department heads, and myself,
So it's
basically.
important for us to keep pushing on that, so I think what I hear, it's hard to get your hands off, but.
Well,
what we
you were
could-
there.
I know I was there, but I don't know what I'm supposed to say publicly.
either.
But we can, Greg Berman, was there and is in, and he's up high in the town. He would be someone that we can get here to give us an update, what's happening, and he can answer it as much as he can, and that puts pressure on him and lets him know that we have certain expectations.
We'll just keep it on the agenda for the next meeting, and then we can, if there's any updates that we can give at that time, hopefully there will be, because that's towards the end of the month, so we should
You
have,
can convey back to whomever that the Board of Health is eager to get
yes.
updates.
They know that, but yes, I will.
And Greg is the guy that will be there, be the, sort of the top.
All right.
Okay, so,
You're gonna do the minutes?
yeah, the minutes from March 17th.
I'll make a motion, we accept the draft minutes from March 17th, 2025.
Second. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay, so they pass. All right, then we have public comments, future agenda items request. Diane, are there any public comments to come in? Do you have it on your, no, okay. And then future agenda items, something we need to bring up or get on. We'll get back on the bedroom thing. We'll get back on the trash thing.
Yep.
And
An
Mill Hill's
update on
always there.
McGrath.
And there's one other thing that we're,
In the McGrath. These three agenda items will be carried forward. I see.
Right.
yeah. And, okay. All right, good.
Nothing else?
I don't think so. Any of the other comments? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Also move?
In a second? Second. All right, I guess we're supposed to take roll call vote, so I will take a roll call vote. Carol? Voice?
Yes.
Okay. John Beckley?
Aye.
Ron Broman?
Yes.
Ron Weiser?
Aye.
And Noble, aye. Okay, so we are
Dunsky.
adjourned.